Okay, so let's start. First day of Rosh Chodesh Iyar. Hayom Yom. What does the Frierdiker Rebbe have to tell us to start our day? The first day of Iyar. At a Farbringen during the days of Svira, he says it's sometime in the year of 1891 to 1893, someone said to my father, quote, the father being the Rebbe Rashab, he said, the Alter Rebbe's Hasidim were always keeping count. So that was the quote. My father, he took a great liking to this saying, and he commented, that idea characterizes man's avodah, always counting. The hours must be counted, then the days will be counted days. The hours will be counted hours, and the days will be counted days. When a day passes, one should know what he has accomplished and what remains to be done. In general, one should always see to it that tomorrow should be much better than today. Okay, that's Hayom Yom. About counting, well, counting the Omer. Today is Gevura of Tiferes. Gevura has, we think of it as severity, but it's also power. The power of compassion. That's the marching order for the day, so to speak. And in Lessons in Tanya, we'll pursue. We're on page 647, finishing up this chapter today. And in Likutei Amorim, it's top of page 124. Okay, we had done a thorough explanation of the two levels of fear, the lower level of fear, Yirat Hatah, and the upper level of fear. And then yesterday, we spoke about the two levels of love, Avos Olam and Avarabba. So just very briefly, Yirat Hatah is the fear of distance, separation, and the qualities that go with that in a person, such as despair, ennui, E-N-N-U-I, French word, and disconnect. And the cure, of course, is to come back, shuva, to start doing the mitzvahs. And that leads to, well, through a couple of channels in between, Yireh Allah, the higher level of fear, which is translated generally as awe, to be in awe of the allness of Hashem. So, and then we discussed two levels of love. Avos Olam, it's called the love that's connected with the world. Avos Olam is a love. It's also a love called Avak Rish Be'esh, Avak like flaming fire. In other words, you're looking at the world and you see the intense, well, whatever words you want to use yesterday, yes, organization, beauty, harmony, the way things work together, the way this machine of the universe operates. And you want to have, and you are flowing with love and desire to connect with the operating source of the all and everything. That's Avos Olam. It's born from contemplation of the world, Avos Olam. And then Avarabba, which is the great love, which is also called Ava B'Tainugim, the love of delights, is when you arrive and have a unity with Hashem, a oneness, and the metaphor that's often used is like a child with a parent, and a baby nestling in the arms of the mother or the father. Okay, now, Hine, Bechinas de today's Tanya. Hine, Bechinas Avazu, this love, which we're talking about the lower level of love, Avos Olam, sometimes comes, Pa'amim shekedemis leyira. It sometimes comes before fear. Now, the Alter Rebbe had told us in an earlier chapter that the foundation of all avodah is Yiras Hashem. And Yiras Hashem, as I said, the lower level of fear is the feeling of dejection, aloneness, disconnect, that's the word I always use, of despair, which can happen, yes. And usually that's a starting place. He said that's the starting place. But it can happen that the starting place can be wanting to the love, wanting to merge with some deeper level of spirit. And ultimately, even though you may not know it yet, because you know something about spirituality, but perhaps not yet about holiness, but you want to connect. So it comes out, sometimes it's the love, the wanting to connect, and the love that's bursting forth, like a flaming fire. I'm on fire and with my pursuit of spirituality and ultimately of Kedusha. Sometimes that can come first. That's what he says. Sometimes this love can come before the yira. According to the quality of one's mindfulness. That's not a good word. We'll use the word das. The das is chachma bina das, right? Chachma and bina are right and left. And those right and lefts of chachma and bina are the source of the right and left of chesed and gevura. And das brings them together. So the das in the mind, and remember, das is the middle kav, and it's going to spawn the lower midos of chesed and gevura. I hope that you have a picture of this in your brain, the 10 sephiros. But if you don't, just right, left, chochma bina, and in the middle, the back of the brain connects with the spinal column, and the spinal column starts coming down into the rest of the body and is responsible for all the nervous system, etc., and heart and everything that's working correctly. And as it comes down into the body, it carries with it this right-left combination. So she said, generally, avodas Hashem starts with yira, which is the left side, but it could be that the way your particular das is constructed, that the chesed, which is within it, is predominant. K'noida, as is known. As he says parenthetically, das koilel chasodim. He says what I basically just said, that das, chachma bina das, includes right and left, which includes the midos, which are going to be the offspring of das. Das koilel chasodim ugavuras. Das includes kindness on the right and gevura on the left. Shehem ava v'yira, which these midos, chesed and gevura, spawn certain feelings. Chesed, the midah of chesed spawns love. Kindness is enacted through love, and gevura, which is the power and the constraint, and the thing that holds back things, tightens things, is the yira. So pa'amim shechasodim kedam kaidmin. Sometimes love comes before fear, even though the ordinary, more common, is yira, then love. But sometimes hachasodim kaidmin. Sometimes the kindnesses precede liyored v'lisgalis, to come down and be revealed. L'ochen, as a result of that, it's possible for an evil person, evil we've defined way back when as someone who's not connected, who's not living and connected with Kedusha. Anything that's not connected with Kedusha, with holiness, is called in the Tanya evil. It's called, or the Sitra Achra, the other side. So it's possible for a Rasha, Balaveras, and one who is very involved in sinning, Shiyasit Teshuva. He can do Shuva because of this love. Which is born in his heart. Es Hashem elakov, when the person remembers Hashem. So it's possible, and we're going to give an example soon of a big example of this, of being very far away, but because there is also an inherent love in the soul, the love can come to the fore and bring the person back. Nevertheless, but even when the love comes back, the two are intertwined, because these two things are always included with each other, which is our major lesson from Sfiras HaOmer. The whole Sfiras HaOmer is speaking about the inter-inclusion of one midah with another. Today, the Gevura of Tiferes, right? One with the other. So even though the motivator is generally love, generally fear, love is also there. So or if it's, or in our case here, where the first mover is the love, I'm desirous of the connection with something, the yira is also included in it. automatically. But in this case, where the love is predominant, the fear is more diminished. And it's concealed. And what is this fear we're talking about? He's just stating what we've been saying. It's the lower level of fear, the fear of sin, which disconnects a person from Hashem. And it's manifest at, when it's active, it's limited by. If a person is afraid to rebel against the king, because the person knows that there are consequences of rebelling against the king, which is ultimately the punishment of disconnection, the punishment which results in negative experience. Chas v'sholom. So it's possible the love, this person is drawn primarily by love, but the fear is there also. But he says this, that a person is initially drawn to serve Hashem from love of Hashem, rather than from feeling despair and discomfort at not being fulfilled and doesn't know why. He said it's an unusual event. It happens. And if it happens, he said to a person, he says this is a teaching for a moment. In other words, the more not normative way is fear than love. It's a fear. It's a teaching just for the moment. The hashgacha pratis, which is given to a person through the divine hashgacha pratis, the divine watching and care, me'es Hashem, from Hashem, the tzarek shaf, and for whatever reason, the person needs this particular person needs this kind of awareness at this particular time. The tzarek shaf. And it's brought out here in the story of Rabbi Elazar ben Dodaria. Rabbi Elazar ben Dodaria, this is a story in Gemara Avodah Zorah. He was a well-known sinner. And his big sin was his temptation for women. And he was, steeped in this, and he couldn't stop himself from this. And one day, one of the women he was involved in gave him a metaphor. He said that your lust is causing that whatever goodness is within you is leaving your mouth like breath when you talk, and it never can come back. And that remark of that woman woke him up. And he did such a level of tshuva that he was fondly called Rebbe, as we speak about him, Rebbe Elazar ben Dodaria. And in one moment of tshuva, his soul left his body, and he was elevated into heavens, and the chachamim of that generation and the ones who could see into the upper worlds declared that his tshuva was entirely accepted up above, and the name of Rebbe was given to him. So, that's the story. Aval Seder Havoida, that's not normal. The ordinary order of Avoida, Hakavua Betaluya Bebechinas Ha'odam, which is fixed and established and depends on a person's grabbing hold of it and taking charge of oneself and directing oneself. So is that a person generally and needs to approach the Torah with a fear, with a lower fear. In other words, with the motivation being to resolve the disconnect, to get out of the feeling of despair and despondency. Even though it may be bebechinas katna, so-called ponim, and even though that sense may be at the beginning small, and you don't know what it is, and you don't know where to go, but that's what's the motivator in general of people, which is, I want to be relieved from my pain, and I'm looking for a way to be relieved from my pain. And this is the sod of Al Kol Ponim, Besur Me'ra V'Aseh Tov. And this is the secret or the inner message of it. Says, first the person turns from evil, and then he does good. Sur Me'ra V'Aseh Tov. L'hoya nafshe halakis, in order to illuminate his godly soul, be'er Torah, in the light of the Torah, u'mitzvaseha, and her mitzvahs, and achachach, and then afterwards, yoreh lo ora ava, there comes the light of Ava. That's the normative path. Ki Ava b'gematria beis pa'amim or, because the word Ava, if you take it apart and do the gematria of it, it's 2 times light. The word Ava, meaning first comes fear, number 1, and then comes love. As is known, as is known to those who know the Kabbalistic wisdom. That's today's Tanya. Comments, questions? I can speak for myself. I basically lived this many, many years ago. The motivator first for me was the feeling of despair and searching in all the wrong places initially to resolve that feeling of despair. And then coming on to something which satisfied, resolves, and love. Any comments? Any becheins? Therefore, so what? Who's got a lessons in who's got a chayenu? Anybody? The chayenu usually has a takeaway. Anybody want to offer?
I can read the takeaway from Hayenu.
Go ahead. What's it say?
Quote, the quote standard unquote steps of divine service. You fear God because of his awesome power. You fulfill his commandments with feeling. Your closeness to him will develop into love. But this actually section is saying it doesn't always happen that way. So that's the standard way of doing it.
Right.
That there can be different ways.
Different ways. Okay. We'll see you tomorrow. Yemir Hashem. Have a wonderful day. Gevura Shabbat Tiferes.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Thank you.